Hi everyone, my name is Zach, and in this video I want to give you a quick and dirty overview about some of the coolest features of Blender 2.79. That means I won't show you everything because there are many new features, but I show you the most important stuff, I guess. And also I'm not the technical guy, so if I didn't explain everything 100% correct, sorry for that. This video was just recorded pretty quickly because Blender 2.79, the stable version, was released yesterday on September 12th, 2017. So let's get started. So first of all, to download Blender 2.79, go to blender.org, then click on this download button here and click on download Blender. And I think a cool new feature from this website is that it automatically detects what OS you are using. So just click on that and it will start the download automatically. So this is not a tutorial, this is just an overview to give you an idea what new features we have, so we won't dive too deep into the features. If you want to know more about the different features, you can find some links in the video description to tutorials, videos and so on, which give you a more detailed description of the certain feature. But before you start, you can read everything about this release in the release notes of Blender 2.79. The link is in the video description, and here you have everything that's new in this version. Just click on the titles here and then you can read everything into detail. Feature number 1, cycles denoising. Cycles always had the problem that it was quite noisy and you have to increase the samples quite much to get a clean, noise-free result. But now Blender offers a denoising feature, which is pretty good. You can find it under the render layer tab and just enable denoising. You have some additional settings here if you want to tweak this, but the standard setting is already quite good. Here we can see a rendering. It was rendered with only 50 samples and quite low resolution. It took 1 minute and 24 seconds. Without denoising, you can see the noise quite well. And if I switch over to the denoised version, you can see it renders a little bit longer, but we have a much cleaner result. You can spot the difference easily. Anyway, but I would recommend not to go too low with the samples, because then you can see some artifacts, especially in very clean renderings. So this is more like, instead of 1000 samples, render this with 500 or 250 and then denoise the image, and then you have a very good result and you will save hours of render time. And another little tip, if you render animations, definitely not check this random seed button here, because if you do, then you have this random seed in every frame, and if you render this with quite low samples, then you will have ugly artifacts. So keep this as fixed seed, so the noise in every frame is the same. Feature number 2, Filmic color management. I guess everyone in the Blender community have heard about Filmic Blender, and finally it's shipped with Blender. That means you don't have to install it separately. So it's a little bit hard to describe everything about it in just this short amount of time, but basically it creates more realistic results and it handles high dynamic ranges much better. So also for color grading and adjusting brightness, contrast and so on, this is pretty good. You can enable this under the scene settings, color management, and behind view, click on default and switch to Filmic. And then down here under look, you can change the contrast, for example. Anyway, if you want to learn more about these features and understand how this all works, check the video description. There are a few links for more information. Feature number 3, Prinicipled BSDF. So finally we have a PBR shader in Blender. That means we don't need to create them ourselves anymore or download complex PBR shaders anywhere. It's shipped directly with Blender. You find it in the node editor with Shift A, shader, Prinicipled BSDF. And it's looking like this. And with this shader, you can basically create all kinds of surfaces like metallic surface, dielectric surface, transparent surfaces with refraction, and even subsurface scattering. Anyway, this is too much to handle in one video. Again, link in the video description. Just a quick example how simple your node setup can look like with this Prinicipled shader. It's for this serial bar down here. And in an older project, it looks like this, as you can see. much more complex, and I don't say that this is really a PBR shader, it's just my attempt to quickly create something similar. But anyway, it works for me, but finally it's so easy to use a PBR shader in Blender. Feature number 4, Shadow Catcher. How cool is this? This feature is especially cool for compositing artists, or if you want to render out some products with shadow and transparent background. In the past, you had to create complicated node setups to render out your background transparent with shadow, but now it's super easy. You just select the plane which your objects are lying on, then you go over to Object, and way down here under Cycle Settings, you just enable Shadow Catcher. So let me quickly show you the difference. Here you can see now Shadow Catcher is turned off with the background. We just have a white background here and you can see the shadow on the ground. And if I now hit Shadow Catcher for this object, you can see the background is transparent and the shadow is still visible. Before you render this out, make sure that under Film, Transparent is enabled in the render settings. And certainly you have to choose an output file format like PNG with RGBA with an alpha channel. If this is not enabled, then this won't work. Great feature. This already saves me a lot of time. Feature number 5, faster rendering with OpenCL. That basically means that you can render cycles with your AMD graphics card much faster now. On the Blender website you can see some benchmarks here, and as you can see the AMD graphics cards are quite good. And you have better support for subsurface scattering, volumetrics and transparent shadows. To enable this feature, certainly switch to Cycles Render, File, User Preferences, then under System, Cycles, Compute Device, you can enable OpenCL, save user settings, and then you can enable your GPU rendering, and it should render much faster than in Blender 2.78. Yeah, and if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you should not have the problem anyway. Feature number 6, better Alembic support. Alembic is basically an exchange file format which is used in the industry to exchange files from different 3D tools. And the cool thing is that it is independent from all the different applications. That means a lot of features will be baked into this file and you can read it in other 3D tools. And the support for Alembic in Blender is greatly improved. That means especially for bigger productions, this is a very cool feature and it's very important. You can find it under File, Import Alembic or Export Alembic. Feature number 7, Grease Pencil improvements. The Grease Pencil basically allows you to create awesome 2D animations inside a 3D space inside Blender. And the Grease Pencil has improved a lot during the last years, I would say. And now it offers even more features and possibilities. Unfortunately, I've never used this so much that I can say anything in detail about this. You can read all about the new features here and definitely check out the Vimeo channel of Daniel M. Lara, which is one of the main guys behind the development of these features. And here you can check a lot of demos and so on, which are pretty amazing. So if you are a 2D animator or 2D artist, this is a very cool feature in general. And I think the improvements are great as well. So I would say these are the main cool features everyone is hyped about. But it offers, besides over 700 bug fixes, much other small cool features, which I will show you now pretty quickly. User interface features. If you now hold down Shift and click on one of these axes, this axis will be excluded. That means if I now press on the Z axis, you can see I now can only move these objects on X and Y. You probably know that you can copy values by just hovering over them, pressing Ctrl C to copy them and Ctrl V to paste them. But now you also can copy the whole data set here by pressing Ctrl Alt C to copy and here Ctrl Alt V to paste. How cool is that? There's also an automated DPI feature. That means if you are using high DPI displays, then Blender will be better scaled to these displays. In addition, under File, User Preferences, under Interface, you now have this display scale value, which you can use to scale your buttons and the font in general. And also at some point, the lines between the different editors will be thicker, as you can see. In the tool shelf of the UV image editor, you now have the UV tools. To mention just a few of the new user interface features. Cycles features. Besides speed improvements, now you have also some other cool features in cycles. For example, texture coordinates for point, spot and area lamps, which is pretty cool. For example, here I've connected a Voronoi texture with a mission shader. And if I now use a normal output from the texture coordinate node, we can see the texture on the spot lamp. That means we can create video projections, or if you want to project some caustics underwater, you can now do this. As you can see, this works for spot lamps and for point lamps. Now I have a point lamp. And if you want to use it for area lamps, then you have to add the geometry node and use a parametric output, connect this with the vector input, and then this will affect the lamp, as you can see here. Also, there's a new feature for the brick texture. As you can see, we now have this mortar smooth. That means we can smooth the lines between the bricks, basically. Mesh modeling features. We now have a new surface deform modifier, which is pretty cool. If you have a plane here, as you can see, I've subdivided this. I've grouped these two vertices with Ctrl G, and then I add a cloth simulation and I enable pinning and edit this group. That means if I now play the simulation, we have this nice cloth simulation here. And with the new modifier, we can create a rather complex surface like this thing here. Well, in actual fact, this is pretty simple. If I disable all the modifiers here, you can see I've just created a few planes. I added a skin modifier, subsurf modifier, and 2 array modifiers. And now I have this big thing with chains or something like this. And now we can add the new surface deform modifier. And here we select the plane, which wants a cloth simulation. And now I hit bind. And now the complex mesh will be bind onto our plane here. Now we basically can disable this and play the animation. Although it runs quite slow, it will run much faster than if you simulate something like this. And I'm not really sure if it's even possible to simulate something like this in Blender just as cloth simulation. Yeah, pretty cool feature. Also, there's a little change in Blender Sculpt mode. If you switch over to the Sculpt mode and enable dynamic topology here, we now have a different behavior of the resolution if constant detail is enabled. In previous versions it was like this: the lower the value, the higher the resolution. And now it's more intuitive, because the higher the value, the higher the resolution. That means if I type in 10, for example, you can see we have a very low resolution. And if I type in 200, for example, we have a very high resolution. With the eyedropper, you also can pick the resolution from the surface, so you don't need to guess what resolution you have. Inside edit mode, there's a new cut option. For example, if I add a sphere inside edit mode and the sphere selected, now I press Ctrl F and here I select intersect knife, and down here automatically under separate mode cut is enabled. That means there's now a cut in both objects, as you can see here. The intersecting part is now a cut, which is pretty useful to cut in some clean shapes, for example. Now I can extrude this and use this for other stuff. I already showed this in my last video, but the monkey Suzanne has now this generate UVs option. That means it will automatically generate the UV map for this monkey. Also, the default UVs for the UV sphere, if you check generate UVs, and for the icosphere were improved. Other cool features. There are now new options for duplicating particle systems. So if you have created a particle system and adjusted all the settings to your need, then you now can duplicate the whole particle system with all settings by clicking this arrow here, duplicate particle systems. Now as you can see, it's the same particle system. And if you hit the 2 button, for example, you can change this without changing the one up here. And also you can copy particle systems to other objects, which is pretty cool. Now I select this, then this, and now I hit the arrow again. Either copy the active, that means the selected, or we copy all particle systems to the other object or to multiple other objects, which is pretty useful. And as last thing, there are a ton of new cool add-ons which were added to Blender 2.79. I just quickly scroll through the release note page because there are so many. For example, dynamic sky add-on to create a procedural sky with sun and so on. We have an archipack, which includes doors, windows, walls, stairs, fence, and so on. We have a magic UV add-on, which adds more features for UV mapping. We have new mesh edit tools. Skinify, this basically creates a mesh out of an armature system. We have display tools to quickly change, for example, the draw method of the objects. We have a quick brush menu, which shows you the brush settings at your mouse position. And as you can see, much more, which is also pretty interesting, is this mesh tissue add-on, which basically replaces all the faces with this object. And then you get this very nice looking shapes. And as you can see, much more. So if you want to know more about these add-ons, go to this link. The link is also in the video description. And if you want to enable one or more of these add-ons, go to File, User Preferences, Add-ons, and then, for example, search for the certain add-on. Here we have this dynamic sky. I enable this. And then in the description down here, under location, you can see where to find it. This, for example, you find in the 3D view tools. So, and as you can see under tools, we have this dynamic sky. So let's create one. Now I should select the world called dynamic 1. And now we have all the settings over here. So if I render my viewport, you can see we now have the sky and we can adjust all the stuff over here, also cloud density and so on. And yeah, this is basically my very quick and dirty overview about Blender 2.79. I hope this video at least gives you some information where to find all the new stuff. And as mentioned, I didn't show everything here, so definitely check out the release note page of this Blender version. There you will find much more information about all that stuff. Thanks for watching. If you want to support my YouTube channel, check out my Gumroad page. You can follow my stuff on all the social media platforms or sign up to my newsletter to get my latest updates. Thanks guys, thanks for watching, and we see us in the next video. Goodbye.